Earlier this year, the Special Investigating Unit provided a breakdown of some of the biggest corruption cases it successfully dealt with in 2023. The crime-busting unit reported that it recovered more than 380 million rands in cold hard cash and assets during the course of last year. Good evening, welcome to Unfiltered. I'm your host, Sizwe Mpofu Walsh. In 1996, the Special Investigating Unit was established in terms of the Special Investigating Units and Special Tribunal Act 74 of 1996. The vision of the SIU is to be the state's preferred and trusted forensic investigation and litigation agency. And so tonight we ask, is the SIU winning the fight against corruption? Joining me in studio to unpack the milestones and challenges faced by the SIU is its spokesperson, Mr Kaizer Kganyago. But first, let's hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa, who said during this year's SONA regarding law enforcement agencies the following.
We set up the Investigating Directorate as a specialized and multidisciplinary unit within the National Prosecuting Authority to investigate corruption and other serious crimes. Great progress has been made in bringing those responsible for all these acts of malfeasance to justice. More than 200 accused persons are being prosecuted as we speak. More are under investigation. Stolen funds are being recovered. Freezing orders, I see you love this. Freezing orders of 14 billion rand have been granted to the NPA's Asset Forfeiture Unit for state capture-related cases, and around 8.6 billion rand in corrupt proceeds have been returned to the state.
Mr Kganyago, thanks for joining us. Welcome, or should I say welcome back?
Good evening, Sizwe, and good evening to the viewers at home.
Evening, thanks for joining us. The SIU seems to be an institution at the moment in South Africa which is functioning, which is getting rave reports from parliamentarians across various divides. What's your assessment of the health of the institution at this moment?
I can safely say, Sizwe, that the institution, I think, is in good hands. And we have got dedicated people that are working in that organization day and night, making sure that they put South Africa first. We really are committed to fight the scourge called corruption. And we can safely say we are doing what the mandate is expecting from us. And we're making sure that the people of this country get value for the money that is spent in the affairs of the SIU.
It's fascinating to look at the different reports that you've been involved in. Let's come to right at the moment. There was a statement issued today about this National Student Financial Aid Scheme investigation in which you've recovered a lot of money. Can you tell us a bit more about what's been happening at the University of Pretoria today?
Yes, you would remember we were talking about the monies that universities and private colleges were keeping at the institutions which were supposed to have been taken back to NSFAS. And what basically happened there was you would have a Sizwe who registers at a university, and then you do not go to that university. You maybe go to another university. But the money was allocated for you by NSFAS in that university and paid already. And when you don't come, it means the money is not being used. And then the universities, instead of taking the money back, they don't. They just keep it or use it for other things. Then when the proclamation was signed, we then looked at the whatever was happening and we unraveled all of that. And at the time, we had, for example, the University of Johannesburg paying us back 311 million. And then many other institutions came up and then gave us the money. And the latest one was the University of Pretoria. where they were owing us 400 million, and they opted to pay 100,000 four installments, and the last installment 100 million, and the last one was done now. That is why we had that statement today to say now they've paid the whole 400 million that they are owing us. But this is something you need to understand, that at that point there are people who are suffering, who do not have funding, but there is money here lingering around in state institutions. Collectively, for that part only, we have recovered more than 900 million.
It's fascinating, and when I look at this investigation, it really causes one to worry about the university sector and the National Student Financial Aid Scheme and the relationship there, because what seems to have happened is, as you say, that money was paid to universities for students, but when students didn't take up that money, rather than actually paying it back to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme for redistribution somewhere else, the universities just kept it?
Yes, they just kept it, and some of them even put it in the interest-bearing accounts, and they made interest out of it. Some of them used it for other things. And those ones, now they don't have the money. They've opted to sign acknowledgement of debt and paid over a period. But at the end, our job is to recover that money and take it back to where it's supposed to go to. And that is the only one element of our investigation at NSFAS.
And part of what you do is uncover these worrying things that are happening across the state. In terms of this investigation as well, there was this the fact that funds were going to students who weren't necessarily in the income bracket that were deserving of the funds, and so the funds were going to places where they shouldn't have been going as well. That was something that your investigations helped bring to light.
No, definitely, Sizwe. You will remember that we have got a principle or the policy that says the household amount that you need to have is 350,000. And anybody who is above that threshold doesn't qualify for NSFAS. And then when we went in to do our investigation, we found that there were more than 40,000 students to the value of over 5 billion rand who were paid this money, even though they do not qualify. Their parents can afford. Some of the people are business people. Some of the people are people that are really in the public face, but their children are being funded by NSFAS. And that was problematic for us, and we needed to then delve into that. And that is why we found that we needed to now go and do a much bigger search, because here is a dynamic. You then have this 40,000. We can easily just say all of them must pay back the money. But the dynamic on the ground are different. We live in a country where you might be the father to this child, but you don't look after the child. The child is being looked after by the grandmother somewhere in a rural area. Therefore, we've got to look at all of those dynamics, interview all of the students and their parents. Some of them have already come forward and acknowledged that they will pay back the money, whereas the others we still have to find. And you must understand they are all over the country in rural areas, but we still have to do that.
Yeah, and just as we round off this particular investigation, where to from here, and when do you think we'll finalize this particular aspect of this NSFAS investigation?
It will take us time, obviously, because the last time I checked, we had about, out of the 40,000, we were only able to interview 4,000. Therefore, it says we still at 10% of these interviews. Therefore, it will take us a little bit more time. But the general ones, we are done. Even the one where we have already gotten the almost 900 million, it is only about nine institutions. From 9 institutions, we got over 900 million.
Yeah.
And we have got 76 of this institution in the country, universities and TVET colleges. Therefore, we still have some time to go to make sure. That is why we are making a call to say, save us some time. If you know that you've got this money, just come to us and bring back that money so that we don't have to come to you. Because if you don't, we'll still come to you and we'll get that money back. But the issue here is there are people who need the money now. And can we just bring the money so that we take it back to NSFAS and it allocated to other people? Therefore, it will take us a little bit of time, but we're trying to push. You must remember, we're getting so many proclamations coming our way. Therefore, we've got to juggle so many balls at the same time.
Absolutely. It'll be fascinating to watch what happens with other universities, and some of us will be looking out for those eye-popping numbers that have been reported. The National Lotteries Commission is another investigation of yours that has really caught the public attention. Can you take us inside that investigation and some of the things that have also been uncovered there that have been quite shocking?
That one is a very interesting one. We got allegations that there is a problem with what we call grant funding because there are many areas that they deal with, but this specific one was grant funding, where you just come and ask for a grant to do 1 or 2 or 3 things, and then they give you the money and that's it. And then when we came closer, we did a search and seizure. The minute I think the proclamation was done in November, in December we did the search and seizure, and then we got all the documents because we are afraid that they will go missing. But the long and short of it is we found a lot of problems within the National Lottery Commission where grants were given for purposes that it's written on the paper. You go to the place where they have, for example, it was meant for rehab center somewhere in Limpopo, you go there, there's nothing. Or there's just a foundation and the cows grazing around. And money has gone. There are people who were supposed to get money to do chicken farms, to help. For example, the recent one that we did was a chicken farm to help the Marikana women.
Sure.
And those women don't even know about it. It was just channeled into a shelf company, and that shelf company bought the farm, and they started using it for their own purposes. But while we were doing this investigation, we came across, for example, a specific one where money was asked for a project on male circumcision. Then the money goes in, but when we follow the money, it then takes us to money being transferred to a lawyers, and then from there, it ended up buying a house in Bryanston. And we say, but whose house is this? Went and checked, it belonged to Muiteri Peto, who is, and then we went to her to say, but how did you buy this? And ultimately she acknowledged that it was a gift, but it was bought by money from the lottery. And that's why we took the house back and we sold it. We then found, for an example, that matter of the Midrand Lodge, where money was taken by 999 and with the intention of developing musicians and whatever, and the bulk of it ended up buying a lodge, which is now owned by Arthur Mafukat and 999. And those are some of the things. And the most recent one that made headlines is the one where the chicken farm was another chicken farm. They like chicken farms. Another chicken farm.
When you see a chicken farm, be worried.
In the Val, where this was bought, and this chicken farm is owned by Terry Petro's sister, and the money that went into it, it was 5 million, therefore it went to people like Tula Cindy, it went to people like Terry Petro and many others. And then we could follow that distribution, how the money was paid. And those are some of the things, but there are so many of them.
And of course, some of those implicated have denied the allegations. Where to from here with that particular investigation?
You see, when it comes to the SIU, we communicate at the beginning of the investigation. By the time we come and tell you about the outcomes, we have got all the proof before us. Therefore, all that we can say to these people, you can deny it as much as you want, take us to court if you want to take us to court, and we will produce the proof. Because we have got the proof of what we are talking about. We do not, when we do investigation, we are very sensitive. We do not mention people's names because we are at an investigating stage. But once we are done with the investigation and there is proof that says this is what you need, we call you to come and talk to us. And all of these people that we call them, some of them decided not to come. Some of them were playing hide and seek. Some of them sent lawyers to us. and all of that. But at the end of it all, we have got proof. And I would not come and communicate that if I've not seen the proof with my own eyes.
Let's go to a break. It's a difficult task to investigate corruption and malfeasance, particularly in South Africa's public sector, but that's the task that's before the Special Investigations Unit. We're talking to its spokesperson, Mr Kaizer Kganyago, and when we come back, we'll look further into some of the blockbuster investigations in which they've been involved, and we'll also look at some of the challenges that face the SIU as an institution. Stick with us.
The issue around conflict of interest. For us, that is a very, very important aspect to deal with because it's a breeding ground for this corruption where employees of Eskom would be involved in entities that are doing business with Eskom. And as we always say, that our finding has been that we have seen these entities gain business in Eskom, being favored.
It's very clear that our country has a number of failing institutions, but one institution that has stood out and been commended for its performance is the SIU. And this is a key instrument in the fight against corruption. This evening we're speaking to its spokesperson, Mr Kaizer Kganyago. Mr Kganyago, the state capture report and the subsequent recommendations are a key element of the fight against corruption in the present moment in South Africa, and the SIU is a key part of implementing that report. Can we come on to some of the investigations that are underway that have been done around questions of state capture? And shall we maybe start with state-owned enterprises? Because, of course, Eskom is front of mind for many South Africans, and you've been involved in a series of investigations there. Could you enlighten us further on the work that's going on around Eskom and allegations of impropriety there?
Yes, let me preface this by saying, most of the matters that went to the state capture, we were already investigating. The Bosasas of this world we were investigating. We had a report in 2009, Eskom, Transnet, PRASA. If you remember, during the sittings of the commission, the State Capture Commission, that is when the arrests around the asbestos issues happened. Sure. We were done with the investigation at that time, and we were working with the Hawks and the NPA to deal with that. But coming back to what you're asking, Eskom, we have been investigating in Eskom for a while, and there's been a lot of issues that were coming out. Because it was, for an ordinary person, it's just a simplistic thing of saying leadership was not doing what it's supposed to do. But it is not only leadership, it went even further into the organization, where we had people who were working for Eskom doing business with Eskom. And by doing that, they then broke the systems so that they can come in with their companies to repair them. And I'll just give you a simple example.
Sure.
The reason why most of the power stations are next to coal mines was to allow for speedy transportation of the coal from the mine into the power station. We had conveyor belts that were created there to transport that.
Sure.
Most of them are broken now. And they then have contracts for trucks to transport coal from different mines, and they've made business for themselves. And in the process of doing that, there are those who then take good coal and then exchange it with bad coal and charge the price of the good coal. And this bad coal comes in and breaks the machinery. And all of those dynamics we found when we were doing the investigation, where there are people who were using their employer's company to do exactly that. And therefore, the problems that are there are beyond just management issues. It's just a matter of people who deliberately were corrupt. And we found some of them. And some of them are before the courts as we speak. And we are able to say, yes, this is work that we have done, and we are proud of it. We are still continuing because there are so many elements of what is happening in Eskom. It is not only the power stations.
One of the issues in which you're involved is the allegation of an intelligence report around allegations that were made by the former Eskom CEO. Can you tell us more about what your role there is?
Yes, we were working with the former CEO, Mr. Director. We briefed him about all our investigation when he came in, and then we continued to work with him. He never said anything about the things that he put in that report until he left. And then when he left, then we got to know that there is this report. But we then went out, when everybody was saying we can't get this, our hands on this report, we then asked Fivers, who was doing it, to come and see us, and then he ultimately gave the report to us. We went through the report, and basically what is in the report is just an enhancement of the investigations that we were already doing, because it's issues that are coming out of added information that he received over and above what we know. But generally, we know everything that is in that report, because we were investigating it anyway.
And were any of the massive revelations made by him, or allegations rather, substantiated in any of the work that you did?
In some of the cases, yes. It is just, I think the bigger issue that has been talked about, and without getting into the report itself, was more the issue of the syndicates that were created, especially in Mpumalanga and other areas. But in the main, it was just taking us further in our investigation, the information that was in there. But some of the information, obviously, is not something that we could use, because we were only looking at the corruption side. The criminal side of things will be dealt with by the Hawks and other people.
Right, and of course, PRASA has been another state-owned enterprise that has been in the focus of questions around state capture and allegations around state capture. You've got a new PRASA investigation happening there. Again, can you take us through what you've learned about PRASA and wrongdoing in that institution?
Again, we have investigated PRASA for a long time. We had a proclamation. We were going through many other things. But while we were doing the investigation, we came across some of the issues that were not covered by the proclamation we had. And that's why we then asked the president to give us another proclamation. And this particular one deals with two things. It deals with the Shivambo, if I'm saying it correctly.
Right.
That long train, you remember those trains that they said were long. They are not the right size. Yes. And then there's the first part we are dealing with, but the second part we're dealing with is the so-called ghost workers that were there, because there was a clear allegation that says there are more than 3,000 people that are paid by PRASA, but they do not work there. And this is an allegation before us.
Wow.
As I sit here, I can't say it's true or not, because it's still a new proclamation. And it is really one of those that we'll have to look into and then get outcomes out of it. Yeah. And it was very unfortunate that it was released at the same time with the Home Affairs one, but which is something for another day.
Indeed. Yeah. You know, as I was preparing for this, you don't know whether to be happy that the SIU is doing important investigations, or sad that there is so much to investigate. You know, one of the interesting features of what's been happening recently around the SIU is usually you get a proclamation from the president, who then asks you effectively to investigate a particular issue. But you've recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, with SCOPA. Take us through what the thinking there is and what the strategy is to be able to get SCOPA and the SIU to unite in some anti-corruption activities.
Yeah, maybe let me start it by saying, I think people need to understand that when people have got issues, they come to us as whistleblowers. And then on the basis of the information that they give us, we then draft the proclamation, send it to the president via the Department of Justice, And it is then, all that the president does is, after looking at it, is to sign it. But it was created by the SIU. Because people need to understand that phenomenon so that they don't have this feeling that the president just wakes up one day and decides to go and look at PRASA or whatever.
Sure.
There is this process. Therefore, when we're busy with this kind of a process, every time SCOPA deals with fruitless expenditures of government department and state-owned institutions and so on, and then they would then call us. When they call a PRASA or a Transnet or whatever, they will call us and say, this is what the SIU has found. You as PRASA, can you explain what you have done with that?
Right.
Therefore, that process has been happening for a while. But then there was this gap where they need to be continued. After they find all of this fruitless, what then? Then they are saying to us, let us cooperate formally as SCOPA, where you are now part of this process. When anything happens and we find fruitless and wasteful expenditure and malfeasance and corruption, we can directly refer it to you as SCOPA. They've already done so. The Skills Fund is an example of that, where they say, but there is a problem here. And these people are now having external people investigating this thing. We want this thing to be investigated by the SIU, because the SIU can take it to the conclusion. Because when you have a private company, they will give you a report that says, go and do 1, 2, 3. But with the SIU, we will recover the money. We will go all the way, recover the money, and bring it back to you. Therefore, that relationship has already started. They have already started referring some of the things to us. But they are saying, going forward, let us have this mutual understanding. Therefore, there must be movement between us and them. And that is a great step. It has never happened with any institution. It's the first time that SCOPA has entered into an MOU with an institution of government wherein they are able to deal with that. But we need to clear this thing before it becomes an issue to say, it doesn't mean if we do anything wrong, they will not call us to SCOPA, and the other way around.
Right. So there'll still be a relationship of accountability, but you can work together.
Yes.
And just briefly, I mean, what do you think could be the significance of this going forward, and how do you think it could change both the work of SCOPA and the SIU?
I think it is a historic moment in the sense that it will now have a process that is defined. And when you've got a process that is defined, then people will know that they will not just come to the SIU and avoid SCOPA, or the other way around. Because when the SCOPA finds something, they'll bring it to us. When we see something, we'll report it back to SCOPA. Therefore, it is a cycle that cannot be broken. And if that happens, it will scare people from being corrupt.
Right, let's go to a break. This evening we're in conversation with the spokesperson for the SIU, Mr Kaizer Kganyago. When we come back, we're going to look at the finances of the Special Investigations Unit and really understand whether the financial model is appropriate, and look at some of the audit outcomes that emerged from its recent annual report. Stick with us.
My instruction to the teams was that we shouldn't just leave it there, because otherwise it's an easy way out for the state institutions to say we can't trace the documents, and then that inevitably stops the investigation. No, we go in and find out what were the document saving requirements, who was responsible, how were the documents lost, and who was accountable, so that we don't just leave it hanging there.
The head of the SIU speaking there, Advocate Motibi, speaking about how they pursue and follow up on some of the outcomes of their investigations once those investigations are referred to other law enforcement bodies. Mr. Kganyago, one of the interesting questions around the SIU is its own financial health, because of course, in order to fight corruption, you yourself need to be a healthy and a vital institution. There was a qualified audit outcome in your annual report. Can you take us through, whether that is a setback for you, or whether you think that was merely a problem of a superficial problem in nature?
Yeah, it was a setback in the sense that we come from 6 years of unqualified audit. And then it was qualified on the 7th one. It's a setback. But it is not something that is substantial as far as we are concerned, because it was just a matter of when we are supposed to be accounting for specific amounts of money. Where for example, because we work through the state attorney, and when we work through the state attorney, and then the monies get paid in a different financial year, how do we account for it? Do we take it back to the financial year that we were supposed to? Therefore, there were those issues that we were dealing with, but it is not something that is substantial, but obviously it's a setback. We do not want situations where we find ourselves in the wrong side of the law.
Absolutely. And in terms of South Africa's budgetary constraints right now, we're seeing cuts to not only social spending, but also the judiciary. And indeed, these cuts haven't exempted anti-corruption institutions. Are you having to cut back? And is your budget constrained? And are your investigative powers constrained as a result of having to be more prudent?
At the moment, no. Our investigations are not constrained. We have got our money is in the bank. It's really good at the moment. And I think at last count, we were having liquid cash of over 600 million rand over and above the budget that we get. And therefore, we are fine. We are fine for now. But the reality is we are getting more proclamations, and we need to employ more people. We need to expand. And if the people that are owing us do not pay us, we are going to be in trouble. At the moment, at last count, we were being owed over R1 billion by state institutions. And then that is a serious concern. Because if they were to pay us, because our funding model is such that we get funding from government, but the rest of the funding is not 100%. The rest of the funding we get from the investigations that we do.
Yeah.
But those people don't pay us because some of them are angry. And in most cases, you find that our investigations are in the procurement space. And you find that the people that are found in this investigation are CFOs and CEOs of these companies, and they are the people who are supposed to pay us. Therefore, it becomes tricky. But we are saying that payments need to be done for us to be able to expand and do what we're supposed to do. And we beg that when cuts are coming, let it not come our way, because we have got a lot of work that is being thrown our way. Just take a simple example of the new proclamation for Home Affairs, where we have got to investigate 20 years of all the visas that were issued. 20 years from 2004 to now. Then you can understand that we need a lot of resources for that.
The head of the institution, Advocate Mothibi, has spoken about the need to review the funding model, something apparently Treasury wasn't too excited about. But as you say, it's difficult on the one hand to expect to be paid by the same institutions that you investigate. Do you think that the funding model needs to be reviewed by the state? And what kind of different model would you replace the existing model with?
Yes, we have already engaged Treasury around these matters to say, because of the funding model that we have, we need to look at it because it is going to be problematic going forward. And the principle is to just have more funding from government, from the fiscus. And that they refused to give to us. They said, you've got money and it's sitting somewhere in people's institutions. Go and get that money first and then bring it into here. And that is why we then started engaging with both the president and the presidency to say, can you help us to get our money back? But also, we were looking at other ways of getting the money back. And we are saying to Treasury, help us also to get this money. When you allocate funds to this specific institution, you must deduct the money that they owe us first and give it to us, and then they will have to make do with what remains. Because at the end, and I remember one of the CFOs in one of the meetings with local government said, but I didn't ask you to come and investigate me. Therefore, I will not be able to pay you. I didn't budget for you. And we said to him, but we would not be here if you did your things well. Because here is the issue. If they had done everything well, there would not be a need for the SIU to come here. And that is the fact. But unfortunately, we want that kind of help. But Presidency is assisting with the Department of Monitoring, really coming to the party. SCOPA is also assisting us. When we go there, at the end of this interaction, they will say, you are owing SIU so much, when are you paying? And that assists. I've seen many of the people paying us, and we hope they will pay us now towards the end of the financial year.
Indeed, indeed. I share your hope. And I wonder, Mr. Kganyago, I wonder why Treasury is a bit worried to relook at the funding model, because one would think that unlike other government institutions, the SIU firstly has positive cash reserves, but secondly, in many ways pays for itself, to the extent that if you do well, government and fruitless and wasteful expenditure and potentially corrupt monies leave the state less and less. So there seems to be an additional case for you as opposed to other institutions where capacitating the SIU, which has already shown itself to be one of the, I dare say, few very capable institutions, state institutions right now, may actually pay dividends to the fiscus.
No, definitely. And like I say, they are not just necessarily saying no, but they are saying, let us solve this problem that you have first.
Right.
Get all the monies that is being owed to you, and then we can have this conversation going forward. And we said, fine. We started a project called Operation Kokela, and we are saying they must Kokela all the money that they are owing us. And now, when they have not spent the money now, the money is going to be going back to Treasury. Why don't they just use that money to pay us?
And what methods are you using to recover the debt?
At the moment, we are a very polite organization. We go back and request them to pay. And that is why we have not as yet taken anyone to court. I don't think it's something that we even want to do, because we expect people to be responsible and do that. But now what we have done is all the recommendations that we've put are now being monitored by the Presidency, because we said to them, you have got the powers as the Presidency to go to each and every department and check what they have done. Not only is it the issue of the money, but also the recommendations for disciplinary that we send, and all of that needs to be monitored, because sometimes they just put it on the desk, forget about it. And then you see people that were found to have done something wrong still continuing as if nothing has happened. Therefore, the Presidency is assisting us with that process, and we hope that at some point we can talk to finalize this with Treasury, where we are able to then say to Treasury, get it before it gets into their hand, get the money back. But also we've got to do something ourselves. We are saying, every time we send invoices, we must send progress report. And this is something that Advocate Mutibi is putting his foot down with our investigators to say, show them what you have done so that they've got reason to pay you.
Do you think, you maybe have been too polite as an institution? Because in the annual report, Advocate Mutibi has said that if this debt does escalate further, it's going to start affecting your cash flow position. Is it time to get a bit tougher with these state institutions that are dragging their feet?
I think it is. And that's why I'm saying I'm hopeful that they will wake up and pay us, because our cash reserves are going down. We were here at almost R1 billion not so long ago, and now I'm talking about 600 million. You understand? And the organization is growing. And proclamations, I think we receive 2 new proclamations almost every Friday.
Yeah.
Therefore, that says a lot. Therefore, it's about time something is done about it.
What could you do with more?
When we've got more, we will be able to employ more people, more investigators, and assist. Because what we do now is we train our own people. We have engaged with institutions or universities like the Northwest, University of the Northwest, where we are training the skills that we want, that we do not have. Therefore, we will be contributing to jobs. At the same time, we will be reducing the corruption. Because there are two things that we do. We don't only go and get the money that has been lost. We also block the ones before it leaves. We block all that money.
Right.
And then make sure that it is not. At the moment, we've got almost 190-something billion of matters before court in terms of value of the contracts. And we have to go through all of those things, and part of that money will be recovered. Therefore, we will make sure that the money is brought back to the fiscus, or not necessarily the fiscus, but to the institutions. Because the difference between us and others is when we get the money in the investigation at ESCOM, the money goes back to ESCOM. It doesn't go to a CARA fund.
Right. Mr. Kganyago, we're going to go to another break and we'll come back for our final segment. Tonight, we're looking at the SIU, which is an investigative unit that has been heralded across political aisles for the work that it has done in combating corruption. We've just finished a conversation about the financial health of the SIU, and we'll go forward in the final segment looking at some of the deeper questions about the SIU, its legislative position, some recent cases that have given it more teeth, and also take some further comments. Stick with us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Unfiltered. The SIU is a key institution in the fight against corruption, and tonight we're quizzing its spokesperson on the successes and challenges of the institution. Before we come back to our conversation, let's see how you would like to intervene in our discussion and take some of the comments that have been streaming in on social media. Mzuvukile says, I would say they, that being the SIU, are doing better, but a competent NPA is needed to win because some of the cases have to be referred to the NPA. Failure to prosecute is making a mockery of good work that is being done by the SIU. I mean, the SIU is surrounded by cowards. Nala says, please cover the NSFAS investigation. And finally, Leo says, good evening. For as long as we still have not seen some serious charges and arrests being made by those in high positions of government and justice taking its course, their fight is just a waste of taxpayers' money. Start with state capture criminals. Mr. Kganyago, it's interesting there because there's a lot of feeling and maybe resentment about the lack of prosecutions and arrests. Of course, you're neither the police nor the prosecuting authority, but are you frustrated that more of your referrals haven't found their way through to prosecutions?
We can't say we are frustrated because we have got engagements and MOUs with the NPA, and we are aware of the challenges that they are going through and the progress that they've made in some of the matters. And we're hoping very soon people will start to see some of these matters moving. And it cannot be fair to say nothing has been done because there are cases from ESCOM where people have been jailed. And there are examples of recoveries that were done. And all of those things are happening. It's just that it is not happening at the pace that the public would want to. And we understand where they are coming from. But at the end of it all, we've got to be one streamlined system. But there's also a debate around having a single agency, because we've been to Hong Kong. My boss, as I speak now, is in Hong Kong, and they are engaging the SIU in Hong Kong. It's called ICAC. That SIU or ICAC that we're talking about has got the powers as the institution to investigate, to arrest, and to prosecute as one institution.
That's a really interesting proposal.
Maybe it's something that we are looking at, and maybe one day we'll have an institution like that.
That's interesting. So with that, does that institution operate separate to the police and the prosecuting authority as well, or would we just amalgamate all of those in one?
It works separate from them because it only deals with corruption.
Right.
But it also goes further because with us, we investigate state-owned institutions. They even investigate corruption in private sector, which is something very interesting. When we went there, it was amazing.
So we could maybe one day have an institution that had the power to investigate, arrest, and to prosecute.
Yes.
That would be quite interesting and fascinating. You'd probably run out of interviews to do at that point. There was another matter that I wanted to ask you about, because it's gone a bit quiet around that matter, which was there was a court case around the Premier of the Eastern Cape relating to your Fort Hare investigation, I believe, which was about a postgraduate qualification, and whether he was appropriate to be allowed into that program. That was interdicted, and on the basis that a further Part B of that court application would happen. Can you take us through what has happened since the interdict, which I think was in June last year, surrounding Mr. Mabuyane?
Yes, the investigation you're talking about is the Fort Hare investigation. And we are dealing with many matters except for Premier Mabuyane. Therefore, with all the other matters, there's progress. If we have not as yet done so, we are about to send to the President the outcomes, and the interim outcomes of that in the matter, involving other people that we found there and the other issues. But in as far as the one with the Premier, he interdicted us only on the basis of the fact that the proclamation doesn't mention that we need to investigate also the honors and the doctorate. And we felt, instead of then fighting that, continue to fight that, why don't we just amend the proclamation and send it back to the President? And we have done so. We are waiting for the President to sign it. And once that is done, therefore, that falls off. Whatever the interdict was about falls off, because now the proclamation will be saying that. Then we'll continue to investigate. Therefore, the matter is not done. It's just a matter of the delays here and there, but it will happen.
And when do you expect the President to sign it?
It's not up to us. When it is signed and gazetted, we will know.
How long has it been with him?
I don't have the date where we sent it, but we did it not long after the judgment.
In June last year?
Somewhere, maybe not June, maybe a month or so after.
Right. I think we have some other comments on social media, so let's go to those, and then perhaps you can round off and give us any final thoughts as we conclude the show this evening. Paula says, what happened to the trains they bought and they realized that they are not a perfect fit? We did touch on that, as well as the NSFAS investigation. And Mbasa says, SIU is doing a good job. It's not perfect, but the reports they publish show that they are doing the work. However, there are no prosecutions, which are, of course, beyond their scope. Thanks for the great content. Unfiltered. Any final thoughts or reflections on those social media comments, Mr. Kganyago?
We really appreciate the fact that we are being engaged. And we have, if you look at our communication, we thought it was important to engage young people. And then we have hired young people to work on social media, and they're doing wonders. As you can see, we summarize big reports into infographics, and people are easy to read and see the timelines, and we engage. And we want this engagement because if we can get to the young people, we will have a future that is bright, because they will understand the do's and don'ts at the early stages.
Absolutely. And the way forward from here for the SIU, any goals for the future that you'd like to reflect on?
The biggest thing for us, and the Advocate Mutibu always says it, is what we call the whole of society approach. We basically are saying, as much as we can do all of these things, we depend on the society. And that is why we have started a project that is looking into categories of areas that have got vulnerabilities. We've got the sector forums, where we've got civil society with us in the health sector, the infrastructure build, in the local government forums, anti-corruption forums. We want the whole of society to be involved. And we are saying, this country belongs to all of us. Let us all get engaged. Let us make sure that we protect the institutions that are there. Because it's obvious they are going to attack us. They will make sure that we look vulnerable. But if the public work with us, we will be happy.
Mr. Kganyago, thank you so much for your time this evening.
I appreciate it, and thank you for having us.
And thank you for joining us for another installment of Unfiltered News, Unfiltered Views, and Unfiltered Conversations. Have a good night.